Yes.
Arrangement. Displays. You sure you don't want to hook this to me? Just a sec.
So you're gonna set your wireless to.
All right, I did all that already because I overheard what was told to Mr. Kennedy, so I just.
Killer.
You also have to join the streaming ad hoc Netflix.
Password is video.
I think I replied.
You got that already?
I already got it already.
Oh, here.
So many demands.
I know, right?
Does this thing have a hook on it, or can I put it in my pocket?
That's fine.
What?
Your machine named Shane?
Yes. It's a social engineering ploy. It's a long story.
That's quite clever.
Okay, go ahead and go into presenter mode. Fantastic, thank you.
You're welcome. See if I can get my clicker to work. And of course, it's not going to work.
Gonna start the camera. Do my sync a dink dink. Is that the technical term? Sync a dink dink. I like it.
Sorry.
Camera sync in 3, 2, 1.
Huh? Okay, I'm fine. I got bad knees.
That's fine. I got one too. You get till about.
That's fine. Just tell me when I have 5 minutes left. Just jump up and.
Is an assistant professor doing digital forensics and information assurance at Marshall University. He's helped found 3 or 4 Geeks and HackerCon. He's part of security awareness. He's just a luminary in security awareness. A luminary.
Well, I've been called worse.
So very excited to hear him talk about security awareness. Bill Gardner.
Thank you. If you're prepared for a boring lecture from a professor, you're not going to get one. I'm a little zany, so bear with me. I also have some habits picked up from a few years of teaching where I try to keep people awake. So if I crawl on the floor or do something weird, it's just me trying to keep you awake. Does anyone want a HackerCon challenge coin? They're wooden nickels. If you'd like to have one. Well, John, you're already a black badge holder, so I'm not sure that you need a wooden nickel, but they're down here if you'd like to have them. So one of the first, I'll wander around too. So can you all hear me if I just speak with my normal voice? I like to wander around because it keeps me awake.
The people nearest to you can hear.
Yeah, well, and the people nearest me and the people on the internet, right? So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I teach digital forensics and information assurance. I'm more of the information assurance side. I don't know much about digital forensics other than they're down the hallway. I always say I'm the fire marshal and they're the fire department. I'm trying to figure out what the problems are so we keep the bad guys out, and they're cleaning up the mess, which makes them very happy. So I'm also the advisor to the Marshall University CCDC team. This was our first year fielding a team. It was an interesting experiment. They got mad and quit in the middle. So we're not going to do that next year. We'll still have a team. I don't know if any of these people will be on it. Co-founder of HackerCon with Rob Dixon. We have it in Charleston, West Virginia in the fall. That's where I first met John. First HackerCon was right after Dave talked about the history of DerbyCon. Adrian Crenshaw had a Metasploit class in Louisville. Was anyone there? I was going to say I saw some familiar faces in this room. And we actually had HackerCon before DerbyCon. And I think what happened was that Dave and Martin and Adrian came to HackerCon and said, if these idiots can do a conference, we can do something better. So we do that every year. It's coming up in the fall. I'm a volunteer for Hackers for Charity, which is something very near and dear to my heart. If you don't know about Hackers for Charity, check them out. Former president of AIDE, the Appalachian Institute of Digital Evidence. We've got the shirt on. We have a conference every spring. Some of you may have, anyone in here speak or attend? I don't guess so. We have one former attendee back there. It's at Marshall University where I teach. And here's a picture of Dave when he was about, he's a little skinnier now for some reason. But anyway, that's our picture at AIDE. I hate to give these bio talks, but if you don't know who the hell I am, how are you supposed to listen to me? Or you may just leave now. President and Principal Security Consultant at BlackRock. And I'm a member of the Security Awareness Training Framework. And I have this book coming out in the middle of July. So what we did was we took this talk, and I swore to God, every time I give this talk, this is the last time I'm giving it. And every time I give the talk, somebody asks for me to give it again. I have to give it one more time after this, and then I swear I'm going to retire this talk. But we wanted to put this inside of a book. So what we did, me and Valerie Thomas are the authors of a book called Building the Information Security Awareness Program, which is going to be published by Singris in July, for the second week of July, I believe, when it comes out. We have to finish the book now. That's what we're busily doing now. So security awareness programs. Everyone says that you should have one, but how do you know how to build one? And this is something that we came up with me and Frank Hackett, who is also in security awareness training framework, which is a pyramid. So you start out with policies and procedures. What can your users do and not do? What are your policies? What are your procedures? And from there, you build a base of a user awareness training program. And then you move on toward building a security program. So at the very base of this is user awareness training. And then you talk about patch management. And then you move on to more mature things. So this is basically what we're going to talk about today. So I hate the titles, blah, 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 you're doing it wrong. But the fact of the matter is that we're still doing it wrong. How many breaches were there last year? If you said 0, I would say we're doing it right. But since we continue to have breaches, apparently we're doing something wrong. So we're spending millions of dollars in some cases. In some organizations, hundreds of dollars. It's an exaggeration. On security products. So we have blinky light boxes. We have next generation firewalls. We have intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems. But yet we're still getting pwned. So what's security awareness training? That's a very dark slide. I apologize. Every time I do these black backgrounds, I end up with something like this. This is Gardner's definition, which is just formalized goal of letting users know what threats are and what they can do to keep themselves safe. So people are the weakest link. Not all attacks are technical. So we start out with policy development. We have rules about what users can and can't do. And I'm very general on these things because it's meant to be a guideline for you to build your own program, and not every organization is going to be the same. In my case, I spent 20 years working for lawyers. It's a different paradigm than working in higher education. If you work for a manufacturer, that's a different paradigm. It's a different set of rules than if you work at a bank. So a lot of these are generalities. So you make policies, you develop policies, you enforce policies. You look at things like cost savings and production increases. So you have to get management buy-in to actually have policies in the first place. Has anyone ever worked at a place that didn't have any policies at all? I have. It sucks because you're making stuff up on the fly. So if something happens or something bad happens, you don't have a plan as to how to react to it. I actually worked in an organization that had no policies. They got a 0 day. And as a result, that organization was shut down because it just couldn't work. 3 days of downtime, which meant that they had to invoke their business continuity insurance because there was no plan. And flying by the seat of your pants is going to cost you a lot of time. So develop policies. So actually in that case, that allowed us to develop policies based upon the bad thing that happened. And unfortunately, and I know this for a fact from my consulting work, no one gives a crap about security until something bad happens. So get management buy-in. Something bad's going to happen. Scare your management. Dave talked about leveraging things like Heartbleed. You've got all these scary stories out there. Use them in order to try to get these things done. In my case, it was Conficker. A client called me, he was a managing partner of a law firm, and wanted to know what he could do to protect his law firm against Conficker. Well, I told him he wasn't really the target of it, but there are things that we could do to help him develop a more mature awareness and a more mature security program. So, in the same way that most attacks are targeted, your security awareness program has to be targeted. Not all users are the same. Not all users have the same level of education. It's different when you're talking to somebody who works in a mailroom than if you're talking to a lawyer, a doctor, who's ever worked for lawyers and doctors. They are the worst people in the world to deal with because they're educated, damn it. They don't need to know this because they know everything. They're also the worst. You ever ask a lawyer if they've ever read an end license user agreement? None of them have. They're like everyone else. They click through because they know more. And I'm not trying to bash lawyers and doctors, but they tend to be a little bit more harder to work with because of their education level. But in the same way, when you're doing security awareness training, do you bring the same message to a doctor or a lawyer as you do to somebody that's working in the mailroom? They're different kinds of people, so you have to target it based upon role in the organization, educational level. Different users encounter different risk. If I'm using my laptop on the road, I'm putting it at risk of, losing it, someone taking it. It's a different risk from somebody who has a computer in a locked office. Home users are different than corporate users. So if a home user is using their computer to hook to your corporate network, they've become what? Corporate users. So you have to look at the different roles inside the organization and different things that people do in order to target your message properly. So how often? Security awareness once a year. Every time you get a new employee. Quarterly. Continually. Honestly, it really depends upon an organization. How much security awareness can your users take before they get overwhelmed by the message and say, screw this. I don't want to listen to this anymore. I hear this every day. So these are the things that you're going to have to figure out. But I'd say continually is probably the best way to go. Generally, people forget things. In the case of lawyers, I could only get them in a room once a year. What you would do is you would say, hey, we're going to play golf. Everyone would go to a resort. Before they went to the tee, we would have a little conference where I'd get up and give them the scary internet speech. But that was the only security awareness that they could stand. In the case of users, it's easier to get someone at a lower level every time they come through the door. And then that's better than nothing. But generally, you should be building towards something that's continuous. And you want to make it continuous in a fun way. At AIDE this year, we had a speaker who was sharing some tips where basically she would build a monthly security awareness message into whatever month it was. So May was Cinco de Mayo. So she would do a newsletter with Cinco de Mayo, like margaritas and hats and everything, and then she would put an awareness message inside of that newsletter. And it's hard to explain. It was really well done. I've been trying to get her to share some of her materials with me so we can put them in the book because they're so well done. It's the best thing I've ever seen. One of the things we did in the book was we reached out to people who have built their own security awareness programs so we could look at people's experience with it across the board, not just mine and Valerie's. So who here has ever built an information security awareness program? Anybody? Is it fun? It's a process. Security is a process. Security awareness training is a process. Remember, you'll never be totally security aware. Is that even a word? It's a process. So, canned solutions are boring. I was just talking to one of the organizers about how every time I give this talk, I get trolled. In the case of DerbyCon last year, it was someone who actually sold security awareness training. My basically view on security awareness training that you buy from a vendor is it sucks. Yes, it's easy, but it costs money. and it's not something that's specific to your organization. It's not targeted. If you've ever sat through it, the last time I sat through one of them, and I won't name the vendor, I wanted to poke my eyes out with a pencil because it's just so damn boring. So canned products, in my opinion at least, do not work. They're no better than a blinky light box that you buy and you put in your network inside your data center, and no one knows how to log into, which we've had those before. Does anyone remember how to log into the next generation firewall? In-person training is the most effective. In-person training that is personal. Is that even person training that is personal? Anyway, sorry. So, big groups are great. Smaller groups are better. And the smaller the group that you can get together for this, and the more often you get them together for this, even if you're going to their desk, is more personal than a canned solution. And you don't have to spend a lot of money. I built a security awareness program with no money because there was no money. They didn't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Management doesn't always understand that you need money to do things such as secure humans. It's about securing their data. So if you go in and say, I need to spend 20 grand for this cool new gizmo that will measure the widgets coming in and out of our network, they're much more on board than, I want 20 grand because I want to have a party. Well, 20 grand to have the party would be for this. It wouldn't be, you know. So the worst problem I see with users is they say nobody wants to steal their data. Why would anyone want my social security number? Why would anyone want to steal our data? I don't understand. It's boring. I don't want to look at our data. But the problem is, and that was my favorite. This is an assessment I did last year on spring break. Yeah, that's what I do for fun on spring break. I do assessments. Is that this agency, which is a public agency, said it's all public information anyway. I'm like, do you realize that you have personally identifiable information inside of your network? And apparently I just never thought of it. So there's regulatory compliance, PCI, HIPAA. You know, if you have, if you're under a regulatory regime, security awareness is going to help you become more compliant. Breach notification laws. I don't think there's a state now that doesn't have a breach notification law. So in West Virginia, I don't remember what number of records it is. It's probably, I think it's 500, lose more than 500 records, PII on them. You have a breach notification process you have to go through. Just looking at the FTC healthcare breach notification law for devices that aren't covered under HIPAA. So if you've got something like a blood pressure cup that hooks to your iPhone, if that data is breached, the FTC actually steps in and starts slapping you on the hand and issuing fines. So motivation of attackers, and I don't have to tell you, I'm preaching to the choir here. You know, there are people out there who want to steal data, credit card theft, money, industrial and espionage. Our friends at Anonymous, hacktivists, cyber war, and bragging rights. So lawyers were always like, what do I have on my network that's so interesting to people who want to steal things? And I'm like, do you represent Coke? Yeah, I represent Coke. You ever thought that maybe through discovery that you might actually have the secret formula for Coke? Do you represent drug companies? More than likely, through lawsuits and discovery, sending information back and forth with plaintiffs and defense counsel, you're basically been given all this intellectual property by your clients, which you're now supposed to guard on your network. So industrial espionage is a definite issue with law firm networks because the security has been so typically so bad. Why attack Coke, or why attack an automaker, or why directly attack any organization that you want to get into when you go attack the law firm which represents that organization, which isn't paying any attention to data security? And then there's the cost. And this is part of selling it to management. If you have a breach, it costs money. And it costs a lot of money. Beyond what fines you might pay to a regulatory body, beyond what money you might pay in order to be in compliance with breach and notification laws, you're going to have to clean this stuff out of your computers. And you're going to have to try to account for what was taken. Most times of breaches, what will happen is you'll walk in the door and you'll say, okay, you've had a breach, what was taken? No idea. So it may take months in order to figure out what was taken. So here's some other actors that I use as an example when I talk to users about security awareness training. Russian business network, Eastern European hackers, Chinese hackers, hacktivism and cyber war. Unfortunately, I gave this talk at an accounting class at Marshall. And there were some Chinese students, and they did not take kindly to me saying that there were Chinese hackers. They just could not believe the Chinese government would put up with this sort of shenanigans. But RBN, of course, millions of dollars, billions of dollars a year made through multifaceted cybercrime. Drink. You all don't get my drinking terms. Anytime I say cyber, APT, or cloud, it's supposed to be a drinking game, but I guess we really can't carry alcohol in here, so mark it down. We're on the honor code here every time I say one of these words, because you're going to have to go out and get a drink afterwards. So they specialize in identity theft, so scary. Chinese hackers, APT, drink. Oh, come on. Where's my audience participation? Do I have to go out and get beers for everybody? Okay, I'll be right back. So, Chinese hackers, hacktivists, our friends at Anonymous. Love these guys. Is this being streamed? Cyber war, drink. Cyber war generally does not affect your users. They need to understand what cyber war is. Generally, it's not going to affect your law firm. It shouldn't affect your bakery. But it might affect you if you're a bank. It might affect you if you're running a power grid or a SCADA system. So we talk about that, and we give the examples. I'm actually getting ready to teach a whole class in cyber war in the fall. I actually had the dream the other night. I was having dinner with Keith Alexander. And so I took a break from looking into it for a while because I thought that was a little too bizarre. And of course, drink. So most attacks are targeted. They're targeting a specific kind of users. And generally what I see is that when I go to give security awareness talks, I see a specific kind of user. So I see a high school student, talk to a lot of students, middle school students, grade school students, law firms, just because I know their paradigm, because I worked in law firms for 20 years, doctors, lawyers, engineers, students. So each kind, if you look in the news, you're going to find examples of how people are being targeted. And you can use those whenever you talk to those certain groups. And generally, oh, thank you.
Now you're good.
So thank you. Let me get back a couple slides. Oh, this is a hoppy beer. Anyway, so who wants one of these? Anybody? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Don't have much of an arm. Too much typing and mousing. So you can use examples, real world examples, and I call them the scary story rules. So tell them the scary story so they understand what the threat is. Here's one with a law firm. We saw this particular scam up until the time I left my last law firm job. And basically what it is, you get an email that says I need to collect money. Law firm collects the money, wires it to the client, which turns out to not be a person at all. And then this cashier's check that they've collected and then cashed and sent on to the client is bad. So the law firm is left holding the bag. Then there's the case of the law firm in Washington, D.C. that represented some Marines that were accused of killing some Iraqi civilians. They were actually acquitted. There was a defacement. In this case, all of their email ended up on Pastebin, which is another example of a scary story that you can tell someone in a law firm. There have been advisories from the FBI that lawyers and public relation firms are being targeted. Here's an example of Chinese hackers in an intellectual data theft where they derailed a $40 billion potash acquisition. First of all, I never knew that was that much money in potash. I'm in the wrong business. But that's an example of Chinese hackers using their skills in order to further the national interest of the Chinese government. So who's responsible for security? You're supposed to say everyone's responsible for security. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you can't stop them from clicking links or opening attachments. You can't educate your users. If you do nothing, what will happen? Everything. So do something. And the idea of this talk is if you do something at all, anything, it's a process. Get started today, but do something. Passwords, we give people very bad advice about passwords. And the problem with passwords is they suck because humans pick them. And they pick something they can remember. So they pick things that are guessable, or they pick things that you can find out off of a social networking site. So generally, I think this is what Microsoft says. What I have to say about passwords is the longer the better. And you should tell your users that. Dave was talking about 10-character passwords. I was requiring 14 to 16 characters by the time I left my last law firm job. And the way you get the 14 to 16 characters is you use passphrases. So then you can throw in some uppers and lower cases and numbers and symbols and periods and other things. Presently involved in some research where I'm trying to figure out how many financial institutions as opposed to how many social media sites actually have two-factor authentication. I've got two-factor authentication on my WOW account. Why the hell can't I get it on my bank account? And to me, that's backwards. And that's something else that I would say about passwords is the two-factor is more secure than not having two-factor. So if you have a password that's too complex, it ends up looking like this. And people start writing things down. And I always say it's okay to write stuff down, put it in your wallet. That's where your money is. It's hard to tell people not to write down passwords. Wallet is probably the best place to put them. Or you'll find them, taped to their computer or under their keyboard or under their mouse pad. Locking computers. This is something I wrestled with. Because basically what would happen is that we'd worked really hard to get a more mature security awareness program. We got more money in order to install products. and you would have people just leave their computers unlocked and walk away. It's a problem. So I devised this card. And they loved me. They loved me so much. They got tired of me hearing it, and then they got tired of reading this card. But generally what we saw was the people became more compliant. So sometimes people need a little bit of a reminder. Attachments, don't open them, of course. Phishing. We still see phishing. Don't click on links. Be skeptical. If you get an email from Facebook saying your Facebook password has expired and you need to click here to change it, I got one of these yesterday, so they're still out there. Don't provide personal or financial information to anyone that solicits it. Can't talk all of a sudden. I've had too much beer. So personal information. People don't think about what companies know about them. But if you filled out a W-2, whenever you applied, you provided all of your personal information to that company so that they can A, pay you, B, provide you and your spouse and your children with benefits. So there's a lot of personal information floating around. So where does this go? Where does that shortened URL go? Why the hell we keep clicking in them? How many clicked a shortened URL in the last week? I did. They're dangerous. You should tell your users to beware of them. The other thing is QR codes. I was eating breakfast this morning, and there's a QR code on the back of the damn ketchup bottle. How do you know where that goes? How do you know that, Dave Kennedy wasn't there this morning and put a QR code? It was actually a way of getting shell on my phone. I mean, how do you know? You don't know. That's the whole point behind these things. So be careful with those. Social engineering, we had a very good demo this morning on social engineering. Not all attacks are technical. People are the weakest link. Who knows who Kevin Metnick is? Good, because my students have no idea who he is. Sorry, Kevin. I need to find a new bad guy, but I'm not sure who it is. But, Kevin Metnick made a career out of social engineering. Yes, he had technical attacks, but basically it was him talking people into things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And there is no technical control in the world that's going to stop that. The only way to stop that is through security awareness. No tech hacking. Who's read Johnny Long's No Tech Hacking book? Great book. Dumpster diving. Who's ever dumpster dived? It sucks. That's the reason I have contractors now that go, independent contractors now do all my dumpster diving. Also, one of my recent assessments, it was doing this in order to get in the dumpster. All the interesting documents were laying on top of the trash heap. So that was very, very lucky. I didn't have to actually get into the dumpster for that one. Tailgating, following people through a locked door, shoulder surfing. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I'm just trying to tell you all the things that I think are important in a security awareness program. Google hacking. Who knows what Google hacking is? Those books are very old. I'm working with Johnny now. We're trying to get an update together. If you want to work on updating the Google hacking books, see me after this talk because we need your help. So you can find all kinds of things on Googles that shouldn't be there on the Googles. I need to drink more. Peer-to-peer networking. Little Johnny wants the free new Mariah Carey. Is that a popular artist at the time? I'm sorry, I'm old. So somebody wants some free music or somebody wants a free movie, so they install, not LimeWire, not Napster, BitTorrent. Thank you. See, I need to be more culturally in tune with the kids today. So they install it, they end up sharing the entire drive, and what happens? Well, you share tax return.pdf, you share license.jpg. there's a lot of identity theft that takes place on peer-to-peer networks. When I first started consulting in 2003, I had a friend who was an attorney who called me in tears. I believe it was LimeWire or Napster. What had happened was her secretary wanted some free music. It was a 3-person law firm. There was her, there were her husband, and there was her father-in-law. That one secretary. That one secretary basically had what you would call the server. That's where they were sharing all their files to. Well, secretary installs LimeWire, shares the entire drive, and now all of her client records are strung across the internet. So, people need to know about the dangers of this stuff. This jackass took this picture and put it up himself. The last I heard, I think he was in federal prison. Honest to God, it's a long story. But I did not take this picture. He took it and put it on Facebook himself. And then he ended up in some trouble, but it's a long story. But, you know, if I can look over your shoulder, figure out what your password is, you know, I don't have to steal it. Instacart, third-party software, we talked about peer-to-peer networking. Instant messaging generally was not written with security in mind, and it is very crappy code. So I'd say don't put it on an enterprise network unless it's something written for an enterprise network. And we used to fight issues with this because people would use it as a way to gossip. We found one person exfiltrating data using instant messenger. So generally, I just say no instant messaging on a corporate network. Adware, I don't have to explain what adware is. I don't have to explain what adware is because it's so prevalent. You update, you know, Java and you get an offer for X23123. Download this and your computer will brush your teeth in the morning. Vendors really need to do something about the amount of adware that's along with legitimate installers. So spyware, spies on you, web attacks, you know. I don't have to explain web attacks to this crowd. But web attacks is also a major threat vector. So what do you tell people? Not to surf the internet? I mean, that's the reason you have policies. You know, you try to get at least the porn and gambling off your internet, out of your network. Lawyers love porn. Is this being streamed and recorded? In fact, I don't know how they got anything done, because if you looked at the amount of porn they looked at on a daily basis, most of it was the women. But anyway, so you know, what do you do with this? And in the case of lawyers, here's 2 examples of watering hole attacks. And these are at least 10 years old at this point. The West Virginia State Bar Association and the West Virginia Record. What do those 2 have in common? The lawyers go there. In the case of the bar, they had broken into the bar's website. Actually, they had an email, like a listserv, that hadn't been patched since 1997. Because no one understood what Linux was or how to use it. So they were inside their network for a long time. And we noticed every time that someone went there to look up someone's address to report continuing education units, they were getting infections. So we had to call them. And the thing that usually happened, at least back then, which is Secret Service showed up and took all their computers because they're evidence. I understand the feds have gotten better about that, but that used to be a problem in a lot of places. You know, it's like, well, we've got a breach. Do we call anybody? Do we want to be out of business for a few weeks or a few months? So that is a problem. But I think that the feds have really gotten better about that. The West Virginia Record's a newspaper for lawyers. And this ad was basically being served from an ad network to hundreds of different legal newspapers, and they were infected as well. So these are all examples of targeted attacks. Data leakage. In the state of West Virginia, if you get metadata that was not meant to be sent to you, you can't do anything with it. Any other state, it's basically open season. There's a lot of smoking guns in metadata. But at least in West Virginia, they've said basically if you get it, don't use it. Redlining track changes. Does anyone know what this is? See, redlining track changes are used a lot if you're doing contracts or if you're writing a book, and it shows your changes. Well, people don't understand how to use redlining and track changes properly, and they'll send documents out with changes. And that's a problem, at least in the legal environment. So we had to do some remedial training for secretaries who had worked 30 years as secretaries because they didn't fully understand redlining and track changes. So if you find your security awareness program might actually find training gaps inside your organization. So we address that with remediating training. Help desk tickets, what's the metrics? This is the problem we've really wrestled with for the book, is how do you measure this? And this is sort of the things we threw together, at least from our own experiences. And you might have some better ideas on metrics, and if you do, I have my contact information. Please ping me. But help desk tickets. At the very least, help desk tickets will help you track the number of incidents you have. And generally if you're getting more phone calls about, hey, I have this, should I click it? It's better than I just clicked this and now I'm infected. It can be a pain in the ass. User questions, are they asking questions? Downtime. Your downtime, at least in my experience, actually goes down. So you're being more productive because you're spending less time infected with stupid malicious software. So this is my contact information. I'm finishing a little early. If you want to fight with me about the meaning of the word cyber, follow me on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Thanks to my friend Chris Lett, who took this picture and then photoshopped the hell out of it. Making me look really good. Like I said, the book will be out in July. If you want to grab a copy, you can go on Amazon and pre-order it now. And you have any questions? Yes, sir.
You were saying earlier that in West Virginia, they're not allowed to use metadata?
Yeah.
How do they enforce that?
I don't think there's any way of enforcing it other than if it were ever to come a question, because lawyers will tell on each other. If they think that they got an advantage through metadata, they'll basically turn them into the lawyer's disciplinary counsel.
Honor code, and then maybe something if you get caught.
Yeah, well, the lawyer's disciplinary board has been very aggressive in enforcing its own rules recently. So I think if they were to catch someone, they would be very aggressive into punishing them in some way. People could lose their license for using metadata when they shouldn't. Now what this has done is that we see in other states sort of this cottage industry that's grown up around metadata mining, especially in legal cases. We don't have one of those in West Virginia because it's completely off. It's completely off limits. Does anyone else have any questions? Come on. I'll give you $1. Yes?
The track changes property. This is the first time I've heard of that as a security concern. That's just to see previous versions of the document.
It's
that have been eliminated and stuff like that.
I throw it in here because from a law firm point of view, and probably in others too, if you're doing contractual work, if you write something in a document like, I'm going to offer you $1 million for your product, and you go, maybe I'll offer you $500,000 for your product. What will happen is that whomever you're corresponding with is going to come back and say, I can see the track changes in this, and you're lying to me. You said you were going to give me $1 million. That's kind of a silly example, but in the case of a law firm, that's a really bad situation. If you're showing, if you're opening the kimono and showing them everything that's going on behind the scenes, that's an issue. You're losing your competitive advantage, basically. So is it a security issue? It's not really a security issue, but it's a data leakage issue. And it blows my mind that we had this problem with people who had worked in the field for 30 years. They just never understood that when you went from, if you went to show final and it wasn't there, that all the track changes had been removed. You actually have to go through and accept or reject the changes in order for them to remove. And for some reason, that was very complicated to them. Anybody else? Thank you very much. If you want a HackerCon Challenge Coin. I've got some left. And my contact information is here, or come see me afterwards, but that's it. Thank you very much. Also, thanks to everyone who put on this event today. Organized 2 conferences. It's not easy to do an event, especially your first time.